Hi guys, this is our next installment video for the standard 6.ns.2.3. We're going to continue to work on fluently multiplying multi-digit decimals using the standard algorithm. In the previous lesson, what we did was we multiplied decimals by whole numbers. You'll notice in this lesson the process and the steps are actually still the same, and it'll be pretty easy, especially if you got that previous lesson. So let's go ahead and get started. So you should always write everything down as I tell you and remind you in your video. So in order to do that, you need to have your composition notebook out and a sharpened pencil. All right, so once you open your composition notebook to the next available page, now we're going to be writing on the left side of the page, go ahead and title your papers, Multiplying Decimals by Decimals. On this side, we're going to go ahead and write the steps for how to multiply decimals by decimals. Step number 1, we're going to multiply as we would whole numbers. So basically just basic multiplication. Ignore the decimals at first. Step 2, you're going to count all the decimal places in both factors. So for example, in the problem that you see here, we've got 1 and 75/100 times 2 and 1/10. So when we do that, if we look at the first number, we see the decimal point. There's two numbers that come after the decimal point, the number 7 and the number 5. And in the second number, the 2 and 1/10, we have only one digit that comes after the decimal point. So when we do that, we get a total of 3 decimal points, or decimal places, I should say. Our last step is we're going to place the decimal in the product the same number of spots from the right. So be sure that you've paused your video to copy this down because we are about to go on to the next screen. But if you'll notice that the directions for doing these, or the steps for doing these, really are identical to what we did in our previous lesson. We're just using different numbers, and both our factors have decimals now. All right, so now in this part here, we're going to be writing on the right-hand side of our composition notebook, and we're going to go ahead and start working through the example that I started on the previous page for you. So on the right-hand side of your notebooks, you're going to go ahead and write 1 and 75/100 times 2 and 1/10. I would like for you guys to try to multiply this problem out on your own and see if you can place the decimal without me showing you an example from beginning to end. So go ahead and pause your video now, and when you come back, we'll go ahead and work this problem out. All right, so to work through this problem out, I'm going to go ahead and multiply my 1 and 75/100 times this one right over here that I just circled first. So I know I get a 5 here, a 7 here, and a 1 here. Now I'm going to put a 0 here to hold my place value because now I'm multiplying by the 2. Now remember I said that we're ignoring our decimals. So if we ignore that decimal between the 2 and the 1, then that 2 is really worth 20. So that's one of the reasons why I'm putting my 0 down there. So now I'm going to continue, and I'm going to multiply 2 times 5, I get 10. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 more gives me 15. I'm going to carry my 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 more is 3. I'm now going to go ahead and add up my 2 rows of numbers. So you see here I get 3,675. Now it's super important that you remember to place your decimal point, because if not, your answer is completely wrong. Not half wrong or half right. It is 100% completely wrong. All right, so we're going to go back and now check our factors. Remember, the factors are numbers that we multiply. There are 2 decimals in our factors. So we've got one decimal that is over here between the 1 and the 7, and there's 2 digits that come after that, the 7 and the 5. So I've got 2 spots there. In my second number, there's my decimal with 1 number that comes after it. So there's 1 there. And when I add them all together, I get 3. So basically what I counted was, and I'm going to show you circles here, I counted 1, 2, and 3. That's how I got my total 3 spots. So I'm going to start by placing my pencil where my marker is making a big sloppy circle. And I'm going to go in 3 spots. 1, 2, 3. My decimal point is going to go between the 3 and the 6. So we're going to go ahead and try another example. In this one, we're going to try 2 7/10 times 5600ths. Now, one thing I want you guys to notice is I did not line up my decimal points. The only time you line up your decimal points is when you're adding or subtracting decimals. We are not adding or subtracting. If you remember the rules, when you multiply, you want to ignore that the decimals are there. We only need to pay attention to them at the very end of the number. So please do not try to line up your decimal points because it's going to mess you up and you're going to get some funny looking stuff. Go ahead and pause the video and try to multiply this guy out. If you, and then when you come back, we could just double check your work. So you can see here on this problem, I got 1512 in my product. Remember, the word product is the answer to a multiplication fact. So now I need to count my decimal places. So in my problem, I've got 1 over here and another 2 over here. So if I count them total, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go in 3 spots, 1, 2, 3. My decimal point is going to go between the 1 and the 5. So my final answer for this problem is 1 and 512 thousandths. All right, let's try our next example. On this one, we're going to do 44 hundredths times 3 hundredths. So when we go to multiply this guy out, we're going to do 4 times 3. That gives us 12. I'm going to carry my 1. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 1 more is 13. Now, I just multiplied by that 3 that I just put a slash through. Look at your second number here. It's a 0. So you guys really at this point, when you have a 0 in here, all you're going to do if you're going to multiply by those zeros is just get a row of zeros. So it really is unnecessary to write all those zeros down and show me that you're adding 132 plus a bunch of zeros, because it really doesn't make much of a difference to your problem. If it makes you feel better, you can do that, but I'm going to go ahead and erase those numbers there. And I want to show you what we're going to do now. So when you multiply this guy out, at the bottom you're going to end up getting 132. So this is where we have to count our decimal places. So when I count my decimal places here, and I'm going to choose, let me grab a different color here. Okay. So if I count my decimal places, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. There were a total of 4 decimal places, 2 in each number. So in my answer, I have to go in 4 total spots. So when I go in 4 total spots, I'm going to start with at the end like I usually do, and you're going to see me swoop in 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I've got a little problem here. Okay, you'll notice here that and I'm going to redo my swoops because I did them too wide. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4 over here. So the problem that you'll notice here is that I have a gap right over here with no number there. I had a 132, which is a 3-digit number, but I had to go in 4 spots, if you notice here. So how do we fix our problem? That's right. Hopefully some of you said add a 0. And our book is going to usually, not usually, but does call it annexing a 0. So we would annex a 0. And that's spelled A-N-N-E-X, or is it? Yeah, definitely the first one. A-N-N-E-X. We annex a 0, which basically means we're adding a 0 in there. So going back to this problem, our final answer is going to be decimal point 0, 1, 3, 2. And the way that you would read this problem would be 132 10,000ths. All right, guys, that's the end of our lesson now. This is going to be your turn. What you need to do, like we did before, you need to, then this is required, you need to take the self-quiz on multiplying decimals by decimals. Once again, when you go back to Canvas, directly underneath the link for this video is the link for the required self-quiz, and it will take you directly to the self-quiz, and that actually comes from our textbooks. So take that quiz. I know it does prompt you at the end to email me how well you did, so you're always welcome to do that. My email address is located on your syllabus and pretty much on the school website and a lot of different places that you can look for. All right, you guys, that's it for now. Be sure to come in prepared and ready to work.